Guys, what's up? What's going on? This is RJ Game News USA here, and we gotta talk about King of the Hill Season 14. Man, oh man, do I got a lot to say, so stick around, like, share, and subscribe, and let's talk about King of the Hill. So, before we get into this brand new season that we have been waiting for 15 years, and Bob's Burgers came into place while we've been waiting. But anyway, Hulu brought it back, much like Futurama, and we're getting more King of the Hill episodes. I binge watched all of them, and I got some thoughts. So first, I need to give my opinion briefly on the original run of King of the Hill. And I gotta say, it was definitely one of my favorite shows as far as adult animated comedies go. Yeah, it's not quite on the level of a Simpsons or a South Park or a Family Guy, but it sits nice and firm right in that, American Dad, Bob's Burgers sort of role, Great North, except it was kind of the best of the B-level adult animated comedies, in my opinion. And I gotta say, they absolutely fucking nailed it with this season. They went about a decade in the future. There's a little bit of a timeline issue here and there. Like, how old is Hank and Peggy? I guess you could assume they must have been in their 40s during the main show. Like, Bobby was born in their 30s. Maybe it took them a while to have kids. And then now they must be in their mid to late 50s. And maybe that works for retirement age, an early retirement age, maybe. So I think the timeline kind of makes sense. But we're also sort of like in modern era. But it's like 10 years after King of the Hill ended. And that doesn't seem quite right because Bobby's 21, he was 12 then, so it's only a 9-year difference. But that would be more like if it was 2018, not 2025. But, they skimmed over all the pandemic stuff. Hank and Peggy were in Saudi Arabia for a little while. They came back to Arlen, and it sort of started up this reboot of this show, which is really just a continuation of the main series. I don't know how I felt about that. I felt like, was it good to age up the characters? I think, based on what I've seen, the first 10 episodes, I think the answer was yes, it was a good idea. It's put them in new, unique situations. So I'm enjoying it very much. And the simple way I'm going to review this is, I'm going to go over pretty much each and every character and how I feel their story arc is going, and if I think it's good or bad. But overall, I think this season gets a 9 out of 10 for me. I really enjoyed it very much. We got to start with Hank. Hank is dealing with new challenges. Hank is retired, but he's finding a little bit of lack of purpose in his life. And so, him being retired, taking him away from sort of the propane workplace, it's helped put him in new environments for crazy situations, which we clearly did see in Season 1. I think Hank's character is always been a character, both in the regular series and this new season, that is constantly trying to learn and grow and figure himself out, and it's still an ongoing process. It will always be an ongoing process. Then we get to Peggy. Peggy was always the most annoying character to me, and she's still very annoying. I don't really like Peggy all that much. She has to exist. She's vital to the show. I just don't like her character. Bobby's one of the best characters in the show. I love the fact that Bobby is not like a total loser as an adult, still disappointing Hank. He seems like he's grown into a fine young man with a mix of Hank's values and his values. I think his character model is good. It looks adult. It doesn't look like, oh, they just made a child look like an adult. They just made Bobby but older. It feels a little bit better than that. They gave him a little bit of muscle tone. They somewhat slimmed him down for what he would have. You know, he was really fat, sort of, when he was a kid. Now he sort of fits his body a little better. Has an adult Bobby. He's a very hard worker like his dad was, being a chef. I'm glad they didn't make him some comedian or do something weird with him where he was like some college kid with purple hair or something to spite Hank and just be so opposite of Hank. But he's also not a clone of Hank. So I really appreciate his growth as a character. And it really makes the show. I think Bobby is such a main character in the show just as much as Hank is. And then we get to Connie. Connie, I like her character development. I think that it's great to have her back, and her dynamic with Bobby is really nice. Joseph was really annoying in the first regular run of King of the Hill, but in this run, he just seems to be a really cool, supportive friend, and I think it's a better role for him. We move on to, we even saw Good Hank in this series, GH. It was nice to see a callback of him and Dee Dee and GH, being a teenager and having his own dedicated episode was nice to see. I believe it was like episode 9 of this run. So he's not really in it the whole time, but it's good to see him in a episode and following up on that and some of the loose ends from the original run. Dale is himself. He really hasn't changed very much. He's very conspiratorial. Now, they've updated his conspiracy theories to include new conspiracy theories, which is nice. I like the fact that it's a really subtle thing they do, but when Dale looks to the side, you can see his eyes behind his glasses, so it gives him a little more personality as well. What they did with Bill, I was a little worried at the beginning, because it looked like Bill was just going to be a shut-in in his home, fatter and greater than ever, and it was going to be a long, arduous task to get him out. Thankfully, that wasn't the case. Bill was out pretty right away by the end of the first episode, and then Bill was almost slimmed down a little bit after that to be more of himself and how we remember him. And actually, although still pretty pathetic, although still pretty sympathetic in a way, not quite as pathetic actually has towards the end of his first run. He had a really funny episode where he pretended Peggy was his wife and that Peggy had died. And, of course, he still actually is obsessed with Peggy. I don't think they did much with Min and Nancy. They really took a back seat in this reboot series. They just look like they're just older, wine-drinking housewives that just don't seem very appreciative. John Redcorn's also taken a little bit of a step back as well. You'll see him from time to time, but that's about it. I like the fact that we got more of Chain Wasana-song. Now, that was more in the first half of this show, before Connie broke up with him. But Chain actually was... He's actually a good foil, a good, villain, maybe, for Bobby, a good frenemy, we should say. Somebody he has to deal with, because his father, Ted Wasana-song, is actually financing Bobby's restaurant. So that dynamic's interesting, and it definitely plays into some of the episodes. And so, we gotta talk about Boomhauer, though. Boomhauer, they really had him be a lady chaser in the original run. They really toned it down now. He was basically original Quagmire. But now, they've toned him down some. Both probably because they don't want a woman chaser necessarily. But also they're trying to make him a little more relatable, having sort of a stepson and even a girlfriend, a more long-term girlfriend. So they settled him down quite a bit. I don't necessarily think it's the greatest choice, but it's also understandable. Boomhauer has definitely gotten up there in age, and he's lost his quote-unquote sex appeal, perhaps, and he has settled down. Also, that brings up Boomhauer's sort of kid, who's really played very minimal role in this. I really thought, and I was a little bit worried that they were going to have like a whole new cast of kids somehow in the show, and they don't, which is great, because I don't want it to be about that. I want it to be about Hank and Bobby. I want the show to be about Hank and Bobby and friends, you know what I mean? So I'm really glad to see that they did that, and they didn't really incorporate too many outsider characters. Every episode's pretty self-contained, just like the original series. Every episode seems to have a story it wants to tell, a conflict it wants to resolve, a message at the end of the show, something to learn, funny moments to laugh at. There were certain funny scenes, such as Bobby had a girlfriend for a little while there named Willow, who was, almost saw Hank's junk, who took a shit on Jerry Jones' desk. That's just an example of a character that came in and came out after a few episodes, which is fine. The characters that come in and out can help shows like this, for sure. Buck Strickland was honestly, he was kind of a dickhead, but that's not a surprise because we know how Buck is. But I really like where all the character arcs pretty much landed with everybody. Like I said, Peggy's about the only character that actually annoys me a little. I have always felt that way about Peggy, but she is vital to the show. But I mean, other than that, this is a show that's about the characters, and it's a very character-driven show, especially now with all the callbacks and flashbacks. And I think they nailed it. I think there were several moments I laughed. In general, I was just excited to see the next episode of the next story. I couldn't put the series down. So for the most part, I enjoyed it. 9 out of 10. I highly recommend this show. I mean, obviously, if you didn't like the original King of the Hill, I don't think you'd like this. But if you did, and you've been waiting all this time for more King of the Hill, it's there for you on Hulu. Go enjoy it. Go check it out. Once you check it out, leave your thoughts in the comments below. Appreciate you all. I'll see y'all later.